A daughter-sacrificed Natalie Brooks sat in the sterile waiting room of Hammond Medical Center, her hands twisted together in her lap. Through the glass window, she could see her father's frail form connected to tubes and monitors. The cancer had ravaged him, and the bills had ravaged everything else. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the bank. Another threat. Another reminder that in 3 days, they would lose the house her parents had spent 30 years paying for. Her sister Claire's college fund was already gone, sacrificed to medical bills that seemed to multiply like weeds. Miss Brooks. A man in an expensive gray suit approached. His face was professionally neutral, the kind of expression lawyers wore when delivering life-changing news. I'm Richard Lawson. I represent a client who may have a solution to your financial difficulties. Natalie looked up, hope and suspicion warring in her chest. What kind of solution? An unusual one, but a lucrative one. My client is willing to pay all your debts and provide substantial additional compensation. In exchange, he requires a very specific service. That's how Natalie found herself 3 days later in the executive office of Dominic Hartwell, feeling completely out of place among the expensive art and floor-tooth ceiling windows overlooking the city. The man, maid of ice Dominic Hartwell, didn't look at her when she entered. He was reviewing documents on his tablet, his profile sharp as cut glass. Everything about him spoke of precision and control. From his perfectly tailored navy suit to the way he moved, economical and deliberate. When he finally turned those steel-gray eyes on her, Natalie felt examined rather than seen, analyzed, assessed for value like a piece of property. Miss Brooks, your file indicates you're 26, healthy, intelligent, and desperately in debt. His voice was deep and emotionless. You're also running out of options. The foreclosure proceedings begin tomorrow. I know why I'm here, Natalie said, forcing her voice steady. Your lawyer explained the offer. I just need to understand why you chose this path. I require an heir. I have no interest in the complications of a traditional relationship. This is a business arrangement. 1 year of your life in exchange for financial security for your family and yourself. He slid a thick contract across the desk. You will live in my home. You will conceive and carry my child. After birth, you will relinquish all parental rights and disappear from our lives. In return, all your debts will be cleared immediately, and you will receive $2 million upon successful completion. The amount made her dizzy. $2 million. Her father could get the treatment he needed. Claire could finish college. They could breathe again. Why me? She whispered. You fit the profile. Good genetics, no criminal history, and your desperation ensures compliance. You have too much to lose to cause problems. His bluntness was a slap, but it was also honest. Natalie thought of her father's tired smile, of Claire crying over her abandoned dreams. She thought of the crushing weight of impossible choices. Accept. Life in a golden prison, the penthouse was stunning and soulless. Glass, marble, and steel stretched across 2 floors, decorated in cold whites and grays. It felt like living inside a diamond, beautiful but lifeless. Margaret, the older housekeeper, was kind but formal. She showed Natalie to her room, a space larger than their entire apartment, with a closet full of designer clothes in exactly her size. Everything was planned, controlled, perfect. Dominic was rarely there. He left before dawn and returned late at night. Their only communication came through Margaret's notes, appointments with Dr. Stone, the fertility specialist, schedules for optimal conception, instructions for meals and activities. The first time he came to her room for their contracted purpose, Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. She had prepared herself for clinical detachment, for a mechanical transaction, but when Dominic entered, something shifted in the air between them. Fire beneath the frost, he stood at the foot of the bed, his eyes traveling over her with an intensity that made her skin warm. Are you ready? His voice was rougher than usual. Natalie nodded, unable to speak. When he touched her, his hands were firm, but not rough. There was heat in his touch, a barely contained tension that betrayed his carefully maintained control. As their bodies came together, Natalie felt the strangest contradiction. Physically, it should have been empty, just the fulfillment of a contract. But there was something electric passing between them. The way his breath caught, the way his fingers tightened on her hips, as if he was fighting himself. The way he looked at her face, really looked as if seeing her for the first time. "You're trembling," she whispered, surprised at her own boldness. His jaw clenched. "Focus on the objective, Miss Brooks." But then his mouth came down on hers in a kiss that was anything but objective. It was fierce, hungry, almost angry, like he was punishing them both for feeling something he hadn't planned for. Natalie kissed him back with equal intensity. Months of loneliness and fear pouring into the connection. For those moments, they weren't businessman and employee. They were just two people, desperate and searching. When it was over, Dominic pulled away quickly, his control slamming back into place. "This doesn't change anything. The contract remains." He left without another word. But Natalie lay in the dark, her lips still burning, knowing that something fundamental had just shifted between them, invisible. Chains the following weeks fell into a strange pattern. They would meet according to Dr. Stone's careful schedule, and each encounter was the same war between duty and desire. Dominic would arrive with cold professionalism and leave in confused. Retreat after moments of undeniable passion. During the day, Natalie felt like a ghost in the enormous penthouse. She read books from his extensive library. She painted, a hobby she'd abandoned years ago. She called Claire every day, listening to her sister's excitement about returning to school, carefully hiding the truth of her situation. One afternoon, feeling suffocated, Natalie ventured onto the private terrace. The view was breathtaking, the city spread below like a toy model. She was so absorbed that she didn't hear Dominic approach. "You look sad." His voice made her jump. "I didn't know you were home," she said. Wiping quickly at her eyes, he stood beside her, hands in his pockets, his gaze on the horizon. "Do you regret the agreement?" "No, I regret that it was necessary. There's a difference." Silence stretched between them, surprisingly comfortable. "I built this empire from nothing," Dominic said suddenly. "My parents were poor. My father died when I was 12. I swore I would never be powerless again, that I would never need anyone." Natalie turned to look at him, seeing vulnerability in his profile that he never showed face to face. "Sounds lonely. It's lonely is safe. People complicate things. They make you weak or they make you human." His eyes snapped to hers, something stormy moving in their depths. "I'm not sure I know how to be human anymore, Miss Brooks. It's Natalie. And maybe you just need practice." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered it with his usual brisk efficiency and walked away, leaving Natalie wondering if she'd imagined the whole conversation. The positive results 6 weeks after moving in. Natalie sat in Dr. Stone's office, her hands shaking as the doctor smiled warmly. "Congratulations. You're pregnant." The words seemed to echo in the quiet room. A life. A tiny person growing inside her. Dominic's child. Her child. Their child, the realization hit her like a wave. This wasn't just a contract anymore. This was real. That evening, she waited for Dominic in the living room, the pregnancy test and doctor's report in her hands. When he arrived, loosening his tie, he froze at seeing her. "We need to talk," she said quietly. He approached slowly, his expression guarded. She handed him the papers. Natalie watched his face as he read. His jaw tightened. His eyes widened slightly. Then something extraordinary happened. His hand began to shake. "You're certain?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Completely certain." Dominic set the papers down carefully, then did something she never expected. He crossed the space between them and knelt before her, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Lo," he whispered to her belly, his voice filled with wonder. "I'm your father." A tear sprang to Natalie's eyes. This cold, controlled man was trembling, his forehead resting against her, his hand protective over the life they'd created. When he looked up at her, his eyes were bright. "Nothing will harm you. Either of you. I swear it." Natalie realized with shocking clarity that somewhere in the past weeks, the lines had blurred. This wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. It had become something far more dangerous. It had become real. The transformation, the pregnancy changed everything, but not in the ways Natalie expected. Dominic became obsessively protective, transforming from distant businessman to vigilant guardian overnight. He canceled meetings to accompany her to doctor appointments. He hired a nutritionist to plan every meal. He even moved into the guest room adjacent to hers, claiming he needed to be close in case of emergencies. "You're suffocating me," Natalie told him one morning as he questioned Margaret about the exact temperature of her breakfast tea. He looked genuinely confused. "I'm protecting you. Both of you. I'm pregnant, not made of glass. I need air. I need to see my family in person, not just talk on the phone." His jaw tightened. "It's too risky. What if something happens? What if you get sick, or stressed, or hurt? What if I go insane from being trapped in this beautiful prison?" She shot back. They stared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Finally, Dominic exhaled slowly. "Fine, but I'm coming with you. And we're taking my driver. And the visit will be brief." It was a small victory, but Natalie took it. A glimpse of warmth. The visit to her family's home was bittersweet. Her father looked healthier, the color returning to his face, thanks to the treatments Dominic's money had provided. Claire bounced around excitedly, talking about her classes and new friends. Their modest house felt warm and alive in a way the penthouse never did. Dominic stood awkwardly in the living room, clearly out of his element. Claire peppered him with questions about his business, wide-eyed with curiosity. Her father thanked him quietly, his voice thick with emotion. And her mother, observant as always, watched him with thoughtful eyes. After dinner, while Natalie helped Claire with dishes, her mother pulled Dominic aside into the garden. Through the window, Natalie watched them talk. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw her mother's gentle smile, saw Dominic's defensive posture slowly relax. When they came back inside, something in his expression had softened. In the car ride home, Natalie asked, "What did my mother say to you?" Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the passing city lights. "She told me that money can save lives, but only love can give them meaning. She said the baby growing inside you isn't just an heir or a legacy. She's a soul who will need more than wealth. She'll need a father who knows how to love." "What did you say?" "I told her I would try. I don't know if I can, but I would try." Natalie reached across the seat and took his hand. He squeezed back, and they rode the rest of the way in silence, their fingers intertwined. The doctor, who smiled, Dar. Stone had a family emergency, so their regular checkup was rescheduled with a different doctor. Dr. Owen Price was young, with kind hazel eyes and an easy smile that immediately put Natalie at ease. "Everything looks perfect," he said, reviewing her chart. "How are you feeling? Any unusual stress or anxiety?" Natalie hesitated. Dominic sat in the corner, his presence a constant weight. "Sometimes it's hard to relax. There's a lot of pressure." Dr. Price looked between them, his expression thoughtful. "Pregnancy is challenging enough without additional stress. Have you considered prenatal yoga or meditation classes? There's an excellent program at the community center on Maple Street. She has a private instructor who comes to the house." Dominic interjected coldly. "Of course. But sometimes group settings can be beneficial. The social interaction, the shared experience with other expecting mothers." Dr. Price smiled at Natalie. "Just a suggestion. Your well-being is what matters most." Something about his genuine concern made Natalie's throat tight. "Thank you. That's very kind." As they left, Dominic was silent, his face carved from stone. In the elevator, he finally spoke. That doctor was too familiar. He was being nice. That's what good doctors do. He was interested in more than your medical condition. Natalie stared at him in disbelief. "Are you actually jealous of my doctor?" "I'm protective of what's mine, not a possession." "Dominic." The elevator doors opened and he strode out, leaving her to follow the breaking point over the next 2 weeks. Dominic's jealousy manifested in increasingly controlling ways. He insisted on being present for every appointment, every phone call, every interaction with anyone outside the household. When Claire wanted to visit, he questioned the timing. When Margaret mentioned the mailman had asked about Natalie's health, Dominic had their mail redirected. Natalie felt the walls closing in. She tried to talk to him, but he deflected, always with the same justification, protecting her. And the baby. Then came the afternoon that shattered everything, feeling desperate for fresh air and normalcy. Natalie slipped out while Dominic was in a video conference. She just wanted to walk to the corner bookstore, to feel like a normal person for 20 minutes. She was browsing the pregnancy section when a familiar voice made her turn. "Natalie, I thought that was you." Dr. Owen Price stood there in casual clothes, holding a coffee. His smile was warm and uncomplicated. "Dr. Price, I didn't expect to see you here. Please, call me Owen, and this is my favorite coffee spot. How are you feeling?" They talked for maybe 10 minutes. About books, about the weather, about the strangeness of pregnancy. It was so wonderfully normal that Natalie found herself laughing. Really laughing, for the first time in weeks. "Listen," Owen said gently. "I hope I'm not overstepping, but if you ever need someone to talk to, someone outside your situation, my door is open. Pregnancy can be isolating, and everyone needs support. It's very kind." "Thank you, Owen." She didn't see the black sedan parked across the street. Didn't see the driver taking photos on his phone. The Storm Breaks Dominic was waiting when she returned. He sat in the darkened living room, like a judge awaiting a criminal. "Where were you?" His voice was deadly quiet. "I went for a walk. I needed air." "You went to see him?" Her stomach dropped. "What?" He threw his phone on the coffee table. On the screen was a photo of her and Owen in the bookstore, both smiling. "You lied to me? You snuck out to meet with that doctor." "I didn't sneak out, and I didn't plan to meet anyone. It was a coincidence." "A coincidence." He stood, moving toward her with barely controlled fury. "You expect me to believe that?" "It's the truth. We talked for 10 minutes. That's all. He offered you support. His door is open to you." Dominic's voice dripped with venom. "What else did he offer, Natalie? What promises did he make while you carry my child?" The accusation hit her like a physical blow. "How dare you? How dare you think so little of me? You're mine. The baby is mine. And I won't let some stranger with kind eyes take what belongs to me. I don't belong to you." She shouted, her voice breaking. "I'm a person, not property. I'm so tired of being locked up, watched, controlled. I can't breathe in this place. If you need air, use the terrace. If you need company, call your sister. But you will not see that man again. Can't tell me who I can talk to." Grabbed her arm, his grip tight. "I can, and I will. You signed a contract. I signed a contract to have a baby, not to be your prisoner." They were both shouting now, months of tension exploding. Dominic's face was twisted with jealousy and fear, and Natalie was shaking with rage and desperation. "You're hurting me," she said through clenched teeth. He released her arm immediately, but stepped closer, towering over her. "You think he could give you what I can? You think his kindness matters more than everything I've provided?" Yes, the word tore out of her. "Because kindness is free, Dominic. It's something you give because you care, not because you bought the right to it." His hand rose, not to strike, but to grip her shoulders. "You will not see him again. That's final, or what? You'll lock me in my room? You'll take away my phone? You already control everything else in my life." Sharp, sudden pain lanced through Natalie's abdomen. She gasped, her hand flying to her belly. "What? What's wrong?" Dominic's anger evaporated instantly, replaced by panic, another pain, stronger. Natalie's knees buckled, and Dominic caught her, lowering her carefully to the floor. "The baby," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Something's wrong." Terror and truth. Dominic's hands shook as he pulled out his phone, calling Dr. Stone with barely coherent urgency. He cradled Natalie against his chest, his face drained of color. "Stay with me," he murmured, his voice breaking. "Please, Natalie, stay with me." Dr. Stone arrived within 15 minutes, her medical bag in hand. She examined Natalie quickly, her face serious. Severe Braxton Hicks contractions, likely triggered by extreme stress. The baby is fine for now, but Natalie needs complete rest. No stress, no arguments, no emotional upheaval. She turned her sharp gaze on Dominic. This happened because of stress, Mr. Hartwell. Do you understand what I'm saying? He nodded mutely, his face ashened. After Dr. Stone gave Natalie medication to ease the contractions and help her rest, she left with a final warning look at Dominic. Natalie lay on the couch, exhausted and pale. Dominic knelt beside her, his hand gently stroking her hair. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "God, Natalie, I'm so sorry. I almost killed you both with my jealousy and my need to control everything." She looked at him through heavy eyelids. "Why does it matter so much? Owen's just a kind person. He's nothing to me, because I'm terrified." The admission seemed torn from somewhere deep inside him. "I'm terrified that you'll see how damaged I am, how cold and controlling and broken, and you'll choose someone whole instead. Someone who knows how to be kind without learning it from a book. Someone who can give you a real relationship instead of a contract." Tears spilled down his cheeks, shocking her. She'd never seen him cry. "I don't know how to do this," he continued, his voice raw. "I don't know how to love without owning. I don't know how to trust without controlling. My mother left when I was young because my father was poor. She chose money over us. I swore I'd never be abandoned again, and I built walls so high that I forgot how to let anyone in." He pressed his forehead against her hand. "But then you came into my life, and you were supposed to be just a means to an end. But somewhere along the way you became everything, and I'm so afraid of losing you that I'm destroying us both." Natalie's fingers weakly threaded through his hair. "Then let go, Dominic. Stop trying to own me and just love me. I don't know how. You learn. You try, you fail, and you try again. That's what love is." He lifted his head, his gray eyes red and vulnerable. "When I thought I was losing you today, the baby didn't matter. The heir, the legacy, none of it mattered. All I could think was that I couldn't survive in a world without you in it. Then show me, not with money or control. Show me with trust." Dominic nodded slowly. Then he stood, walked to his study, and returned with the contract. Their contract. The document that had started everything. He knelt beside her again and began tearing it. Page by page, clause by clause, he ripped apart the agreement that had bound them. "No more contract," he said softly. "No more rules. Just us, if you'll have me. Not as an employer, not as the father of your child, but as a man who loves you and is trying to learn how to do it right." Natalie smiled through her tears. "It's a start." He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. "I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you." "The rest of our lives," she corrected. Together, building a foundation. The weeks following their breakthrough were different. Dominic canceled his morning meetings to have breakfast with Natalie. He asked about her day, her feelings, her dreams. He listened, really listened. Instead of planning his next move, he started therapy. Surprising her one evening by admitting he'd found a counselor who specialized in attachment issues and control behaviors. "Meant what I said," he told her. "I want to be better. For you, for our daughter, and honestly for myself." "Ow!" "Our daughter," Natalie smiled. They'd learned the baby's gender the week before. "Our daughter," he repeated, his hand resting on her growing belly. "I keep thinking about her. What kind of father I want to be. What kind of man I want her to see me as." They transformed one of the spare rooms into a nursery together. Dominic, who had never painted anything in his life, spent a Saturday afternoon carefully applying soft lavender paint to the walls while Natalie directed from a comfortable chair. "You missed a spot," she teased. "Where?" He turned, paintbrush in hand, looking so earnest and domestic that she laughed. "I'm kidding. It looks perfect." He grinned, actually grinned, and Natalie felt her heart swell. This man, with paint in his hair and joy on his face, was nothing like the cold stranger she'd met months ago. The unexpected guest one afternoon, the doorbell rang. Margaret answered it, then came to find Dominic with an uncertain expression. Sir, there's a man here claiming to be your brother. Dominic froze, his face going pale. Tell him I'm not home, Dominic. Natalie touched his arm. You have a brother? Had, past tense. His voice was tight. We haven't spoken in 8 years. Maybe you should see what he wants. He looked at her, conflict clear in his eyes, then nodded slowly. James Hartwell looked similar to Dominic, but softer somehow. Where Dominic was all sharp angles and controlled power, James had gentle eyes and an easy smile. He stood in the foyer, hands in his pockets, looking nervous. Dom, thanks for seeing me. Don't call me that. Dominic's voice was cold. What do you want? I heard through the family lawyer that you were expecting a child. I wanted to congratulate you. And maybe to finally talk. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice 8 years ago. Natalie looked between them, sensing deep pain beneath the hostility. Why don't we all sit down? I'll have Margaret bring coffee. This doesn't concern you, Dominic said sharply. Actually, it does. I'm having your child. That makes your family my business. She turned to James. Please, stay. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Over coffee, the story emerged. 8 years ago, when Dominic was building his empire, he'd asked James to join him as a partner. But James had declined, choosing instead to open a small community center in their old neighborhood. Working with the Tris kids. You called me a fool, James said quietly. You said I was throwing away my potential, that helping others was weakness. You chose poverty over success, Dominic replied, but his voice lacked conviction. I chose purpose over profit. There's a difference. James turned to Natalie. Our mother left when we were young. Dominic was 12, I was 10. She ran off with a wealthy man, left us with our dad who worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. Dom swore he'd never be poor or powerless again. He built this empire, and I don't fault him for that. But somewhere along the way, he started believing that money and control were the only things that mattered. That's not true, Dominic said, but he looked at Natalie as he said it. Uncertainty in his eyes, isn't it? When's the last time you did something just because it was right, not because it benefited you? When's the last time you let someone close without trying to own them? Natalie watched Dominic struggle with the truth in his brother's words. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough. I'm trying. I'm learning. It's hard, James. James's expression softened. I know it is. That's why I came. Not to judge you, but to offer support. You're going to be a father, Dom. You're going to hold this tiny person who depends on you completely. And you'll have a choice. You can raise her the way we were raised, with walls and fears. Or you can break the cycle. Dominic's hand found Natalie's, squeezing tight. I want to break it. I don't want my daughter to grow up afraid of love. Then let me help. Let me be her uncle. Let's be family again. The two brothers looked at each other across years of hurt and misunderstanding. Then Dominic stood, crossed to his brother, and pulled him into a fierce hug. I'm sorry, Dominic whispered. For all of it. I was wrong. James hugged him back. We both were. Let's do better. Natalie wiped tears from her eyes, watching the two men reconcile. Family wasn't just about blood, she realized. It was about choosing to forgive, to grow, to love despite pain. The birth 3 weeks early, on a rainy Tuesday night, Natalie woke to cramping pain. Dominic, she gasped, shaking him awake. It's time. He moved instantly, all efficiency and controlled panic. He called Dr. Stone, grabbed the prepared hospital bag, and helped Natalie to the car. But in the elevator, she saw his hands shaking. I'm scared, he admitted. Me too. He took her face in his hands. You're the strongest person I know. You're going to be amazing. And I'll be right there with you. Every moment. Labor was long and hard. 18 hours of pain and exhaustion. But Dominic never left her side. He held her hand, whispered encouragement, wiped her forehead with cool cloths. When she screamed at him that this was all his fault, he agreed readily. When she sobbed that she couldn't do it anymore, He told her she already was. And then, as dawn broke through the hospital window, their daughter entered the world with a furious cry. Dr. Stone placed the tiny, wrinkled, perfect baby on Natalie's chest. "Congratulations. She's beautiful." Natalie looked down at the little face, the tiny fingers curling and uncurling, and felt her heart expand beyond anything she'd thought possible. "Hello, sweetheart. We've been waiting for you." Dominic stood frozen, staring at his daughter with an expression of absolute wonder. Dr. Stone smiled. "Would you like to hold her, Mr. Hartwell?" With trembling hands, he took his daughter. She was so small in his arms, fragile and trusting. She opened her eyes, gray like his, and looked at him. And in that moment, Dominic Hartwell, who had built an empire on control and calculation, completely fell apart. He sobbed, tears streaming down his face as he gazed at the miracle in his arms. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your daddy. And I promise you'll never doubt that you're loved. You'll never wonder if you matter, because you're everything. You're my whole world." Natalie watched him through her own tears, seeing the final walls crumble. This was the man she'd fallen in love with. Not the cold businessman, but this tender, vulnerable father holding his daughter like she was made of dreams. "What should we name her?" Dominic asked softly. Natalie thought of everything they'd been through, all the pain and growth and love. "Hope. Her name is Hope." "Hope," Dominic repeated, pressing a kiss to his daughter's forehead. "Hope Margaret Hartwell." "Margaret." Natalie smiled. After someone who showed us both kindness when we needed it most. A new beginning 6 weeks later. On a perfect spring afternoon, they stood in Natalie's parents' garden with their families around them. Claire held baby Hope, cooing at her niece. James stood as Dominic's best man, and Natalie's mother beamed with joy. It wasn't a large wedding or an expensive one. Just the people they loved, simple flowers and honest vows. "I came to you seeking an heir," Dominic said, his voice thick with emotion. "But you gave me so much more. You gave me hope, faith, and love. You taught me that the strongest power isn't control, but surrender. The greatest wealth isn't money, but connection. And the best legacy isn't an empire, but a family built on trust and forgiveness." He took her hands. "Natalie Brooks, you saw the man I could be when I couldn't see it myself. You loved me at my worst and challenged me to be my best. I promise to spend every day of our lives earning the gift of your love, to be the partner you deserve, the father our daughter needs, and the man I always should have been." Natalie's own vows were simple. "Dominic Hartwell, you gave me security when I was drowning. But more than that, you gave me yourself, the real you beneath all the armor. I promise to be your safe place, your cheerleader, your equal partner. To remind you, when you forget that love isn't about possession, but about freedom. And to build a life with you that our daughter will be proud to inherit." When they kissed, their families cheered. Hope gurgled happily in Claire's arms. And the man who had tried to buy an heir learned that the greatest things in life can never be purchased. They can only be given. Freely and with an open heart. Epilogue 5 years later. Dominic stood in his office, but it looked very different now. Photos covered his desk, Natalie laughing, Hope on her first day of school, James teaching Hope to ride a bike. The cold, impersonal space had become a shrine to the family he'd never thought he'd have. His assistant knocked. "Mr. Hartwell, the proposal from the Pemberton Group is ready for your review." "Thank you, Rachel, but I'm leaving in an hour. It's Hope's dance recital, and I promised I'd be there early." Rachel smiled. Everyone in the company knew that Dominic's family came first now. It was one of many changes he'd implemented. Flexible work hours, parental leave, mental health support, building an empire, he'd learned, meant nothing if you destroyed souls along the way. Natalie appeared in his doorway, Hope holding her hand. His daughter wore a tiny tutu and an enormous smile. "Daddy, look, I'm a butterfly." Dominic's heart melted, as it did every time he saw them. He closed his laptop and crossed to them, scooping Hope into his arms. "The most beautiful butterfly in the world. Are you coming to watch me dance?" I wouldn't miss it for anything." Natalie smiled at him, the same smile that had cracked his walls years ago. He pulled her close with his free arm, holding his whole world in his embrace. "Mr. Hartwell, the Pemberton meeting," Rachel reminded gently. "Reschedule it. Some things are more important than business." As they left the office, Hope chattering excitedly about her dance, Natalie leaned against Dominic's shoulder. "I'm proud of you. You've come so far." "You've come so far," he corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." It was true. The contract that had brought them together was ash. But from those ashes, they'd built something real, something lasting, a family, a love, a life worth living. And that was the greatest inheritance of all.